Because it's not mute, it's yeah, good to go.
Yeah.
Cool. We're just going to get started, if that's right. If everyone could halt conversations, please. Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us tonight. This is a meeting of Frome Town Council, and I'm Fiona Bowers, and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. Just to remind everyone, we've got people online and here in the room. For those in the room, a little housekeeping. The emergency exit is in the rear corner of the room, and the assembly point is on the far side of the car park. Toilets are at the end of the corridor on the right, and there is an accessible toilet to the right of the lift. Please do help yourselves to a cup of tea and a glass of water. Tonight, Peter will clerk, Laura, Sian, Sarah, Becca and Rachel will manage the minutes, questions board, participant settings and the IT generally. The meeting will be recorded and made available on our YouTube channel. For those councillors attending via Zoom, please use the yellow hand, and for everyone else, please ask questions through the Q&A board. Great, so first on the agenda is apologies for absence. Peter, have any been received?
Sarah Butler has given her apologies. Do we have anyone online? Carla Collinette as well.
Great. Oh, actually, first on the agenda was waiving standing orders and electing a chair, but we actually don't need to do that.
That's right.
Tonight. Woohoo! So that's a good thing. Okay, next is declaration of councillors.
To take
I'm out of practice, sorry. Can I get someone to propose that we accept apologies for absence? Anne, seconded by Philip. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Great. And then up next is declaration of councillors' interests. Do any councillors have any interests they would like to declare? No? Great. And then to accept the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 10th of June. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes? No?
Can I just say that we have spotted an error, an administrative error. Andy Jones is shown as both being present and being absent. So we'll make an amendment. It's an incredible feat that. So we'll make that amendment to the formal minute.
So was he present or was he absent?
Absent.
Okay. Brilliant. So can I then get a proposer to accept those minutes? Nick, seconded by Philip. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Brilliant. Okay, and then next up is questions and comments from the public and from councillors. And before I go to the rest of the room, I want to start by sharing some really good news. Our flagship parks of Victoria Park and Mary Bailey have just been awarded the Green Flag for Excellence. The Green Flag is an international benchmark for well-managed parks and green spaces and recognises and rewards those that are clean, safe, sustainable and highly engaged with their local communities. So we're really pleased that they found that Victoria Park and Mary Bailey were all of those things. The team that assessed the sites were particularly impressed with the breadth of activities and features that we offer and the community involvement. So I just want to say congratulations to Rob Holden, our environment manager, who's not here tonight, and the Ranger team, as well as our community and communications teams as well, for everything they do. I think that's good. Any other questions and comments from anyone in the room? Philip.
Thank you. Just two very, very quick points. One, I think which might tie in with why certain people are here this evening. Following the Frome summit, and my comment to Bill Ravens about the fact that Frome Hospital and Medical Practice, if I can call it the medical campus, does not have a regular bus service. Bill Revens himself said he would be on it. He has been on it, and I heard from John Perrott, who's at Somerset Bus Infrastructure, that a new timetable for the 30 bus route is proposed, and that bus route, if it's accepted, and we're in the situation now where I've met with Julie at the medical practice and Heather, the matron at the hospital, who are very excited and very keen that it happens, that it would happen in September when the timetable changes occur. What we're looking at the moment is to have a joint meeting at the hospital, and also to have a look where a bus stop could be sited, and it's hoped that that bus stop will also be a green roof bus stop, not just a standard bus stop. That's point number one. Point number two, tomorrow morning the Frooks will set off on their journey to our partner town Merhart for a partner gathering. Unfortunately, Mark, our mayor, can't attend, and neither can I. But Richard Ackroyd, you may have heard of him, he's of the Frooks. He will be representing Frome and giving a sort of a welcome and thank you speech at Merhart. But also to say that there is a discussion happening on Friday morning regarding itself or partnerships. And some of the suggestions that we made from Frome are being put forward and hopefully implemented, that the partnership large meeting may only happen once every 3 or 4 years, cut down on travel and so on. And that partnerships are developed across communities across the year, not just single weekend events. And the other thing is that they're also discussing a platform which was suggested by us, where the 5 towns now can implement all their activities, organizations and so on for each other town and organizations thereof to be able to access and then build up their own links. Thank you.
Amazing. Buses and twinning, your 2 favourite subjects. Amazing. Are there any other questions and comments from anyone else in the room? Yes, hi. Can you just say your name as well?
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to apologise for being late. I've been on a tractor, and that's actually the reason why I'm here. So my name is Victoria Hicks. I'm a farmer's wife from just outside of Frome, and we're tenant farmers for the land that's commonly known as Sunset Fields up at Vallis. And I stand here today to talk to you about the crop damage that we receive year over year on that field. My husband's family have farmed that field and that land for 35 years, and ever since COVID, the crop damage gets worse and worse and worse. We've faced abuse from people not sticking to footpaths when we ask them kindly to stick to the footpaths. We face people that when it snows, they ride the motorbikes on there, and just general sort of damage. So I stand here tonight to ask you, what can Frome Town Council do to ask people and make sure that people stick to the footpaths? And it's not just kids that are damaging the crops, it's dog walkers, it's other visitors that don't stick to the footpaths. And the crop damage in there equates to around £3,000 to £4,000 every year, which you might say that doesn't sound enough, but when I tell you last year we only made £4,950, it all matters. So please, can I ask this group, what can you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have seen things on social media about this, and I'm just so sorry. I know that it has been going on for quite a while. Nick, do you want to come in?
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I'm also really sorry. I'm a town councillor, and I've got kind of lead responsibility for liaising with the police. And I met with them this week to talk just about this. Had been raised. We've seen that there have been calls. They are doing a series of late shifts to the neighbourhood policing team to specifically try and target the people who were lately responsible for it. I think quite a lot of it recently has been potentially younger people who are out of school, finished exams, but I appreciate it's a longer going issue and it's been going on, as you say, for years. I'm really sorry. I know how hard it is for farmers at the best of times. So the police are going to focus on it. We meet every 3 weeks, but they're going to report back in the next week and let me know what they've found out and what's happening. Okay. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah, also just to say that Sunset Fields are also in the ward that I represent. It's in Oakfield ward, so I'm Fiona Barrows. The other ward councillor is Carla Colonette, who I think is online tonight. But I'm sure that one of us can also meet with you as well and go a bit deeper into it. I think it's sort of, yeah, Lisa, do you want to say something? Yeah, just to say that I think it's possibly something that we might need to have a bit of a conversation about and see what we can do to help. I don't know whether there's some communications that we can do or whatever, but I think we might have to agree to sort of take that away. But with Nick, myself, particularly involved in it to sort of make sure that we do something. Lisa.
Yeah, just thank you for coming in. Rachel, I don't know when the last time there was any kind of campaign around countryside, taking care of nature or wildlife, and perhaps a campaign that could also be supported by Frome College and the schools in the area. Nick, you'll know that when schools break up, the crime rates tend to go up. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones committing the crimes, but there is statistics that suggest that there is a change in crime patterns when schools break up. So perhaps a joint campaign between Frome Town Council, the schools in the area, just raising awareness, respect for the countryside, and maybe emphasizing the importance of maintaining farming land because it feeds us all.
Yeah, Rachel. Say something.
Yes, hello. It seems to be quite a timely, we're just about to launch the nature recovery plan and consultation. So it seems like a really good time to be talking about countryside nature recovery and so absolutely, I'm sure that we can do a communications plan alongside. And just to reiterate that Carla Colonette, who is your other ward councillor, would be really happy to meet with you. She's just messaged online to say that.
Andy.
Yeah, I just wonder whether it's worth, given how close the end of term is, whether Melody could drop a line to all of the heads just to ask them to do something as part of their end of term wrap up to nudge things in the right direction.
That's a really good idea. And I was also thinking, Nick, there's the police community. They go into schools quite regularly, don't they, to talk about issues, PCSOs, and we can maybe flag it to them to mention on their next. Yeah. Okay, great. Tracy?
As well as being a councillor, I represent Purple Elephant, who have the Frome.
Sorry, just one person speaking at one time, please.
As well as being a town councillor, I represent Purple Elephant, which is a charity for children, young people, and families. And if Melody is able to do something about that, I'd be very happy to put something in the newsletter just to raise awareness to those who are connected with us. Just start that messaging going. As you say, we're very close to the end of term, so we try and get some of that out there now.
If you could leave because I think there's lots of ideas, and I think what we probably need to go away is just go away and have a bit of a think and just work out what's going to be most effective and helpful and sort of coordinate it all a bit. If you could either sort of agree to sort of send get email addresses, and then we can make sure that we kind of keep in touch. But we really do appreciate you coming tonight and really do understand the issue, and it is it's horrible to hear, and hopefully we can do something that will help. Otherwise, thank you. Any other questions and comments from anyone? No? Great. Okay, so now we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to discuss the achievements and legacy of the Green and Healthy Frome programme. And I'm actually going to introduce this myself just very briefly before handing over to Abby, who evaluated the project. So for those of you that might not know, and hopefully that is no one here tonight, because we've been involved with the project for quite a while and talking about it a lot, but Green and Healthy Frome was a pioneering partnership between Frome Town Council, Adventure Frome and Frome Medical Practice. And back in 2023 we secured £1.7 million of funding from the Community Action Fund, Climate Action Fund, over 3 years to foster greener, healthier living in Frome and beyond by engaging community to make changes that are good for the planet with health and cost of living co-benefits. It was the first major project that I was involved in as a very green councillor in many ways back in 2022. And I think when I look back on my time as a councillor, one of the standouts will always be getting the message from Johannes that we had successfully secured the funding, and I ran into Badgers Hill where I was meeting other councillors, and it's meant to be sort of confidential, so I sort of quietly screamed, "We've got the money, we've done it." And I will always remember that. So I'm incredibly proud to have played a small part in this project, and it has genuinely shaped how the way that I work as a councillor. Working in partnership isn't always easy, but this project really demonstrated how much stronger we are when we all work together, and each partner brought something unique to the table, and combining those different strengths, we achieved far more than together than any of us could have alone. For us, for Frome Town Council, I think this was the first project of this scale and complexity that we'd ever delivered in partnership. And so naturally, there are things that we would all do differently if we were starting again today. And I think that's exactly as it should be, because if we're not reflecting, learning and improving, then we're not paying attention. One of the things that this funding from the Climate Action Fund enabled us to do was to commission a full evaluation of the project, to look really carefully at what we'd achieved, to understand the impact that we'd had, and just as importantly, to capture the lessons that we'd learned along the way. Having this budget and this capacity to do that is something that is quite rare for us as a town council, and I think is just genuinely incredibly helpful and useful. It was a very difficult project to evaluate, something that sort of came through quite a lot in lots of discussions, as I think any sort of new pioneering project is, but I think it also sort of shows, and I think that we won't really know the true impact of this project for quite a while yet, because I think we set in motion a lot of things, and there's a lot of impact that is still to be felt in the years to come. So I just want to say thank you to Abby and Ben for producing such a thoughtful and insightful evaluation, and most importantly, I just really like to thank everyone who made Green and Healthy Frome possible over the past 3 years, or 5 years actually, everyone who was involved in it, because the team did an absolutely incredible job. I think there is so much, and there was a report to be proud of, and a lot that will shape how we work in the future as well. So Abby, over to you if you want to come up.
Can you all hear me? Yes, you can. Lovely. Okay. Hello, I'm Abby Green. I'm one half of the directorship of the Conscious Project, which is a Frome-based consultancy. We work in coaching, consultancy, facilitation, leadership development, and learning. And so we feel very privileged to be able to present to you this final evaluation. And thank you, Peter. There's 2 reports, one which is all the bells and whistles and the nitty-gritty detail, and there's also a shorter report which is a little bit more digestible and has more pictures, and I'd really encourage you to go and read them if you haven't done so already. So this presentation, woohoo! Is in 8 sections. I'm just going to very lightly introduce the project if it's new to you, and overview the evaluation. I'm not going into huge detail here. I'll talk a bit about the main findings, and then a few sort of selected achievements and opportunities that have arisen from the various different pieces of work that came under the umbrella of Green and Healthy Frome. I'm going to walk you through the project recommendations, which is one of the main outputs of any evaluation, and some of the things that we think are most useful for Frome in terms of learning for the future, and then just a couple of reflections from Ben and myself on the project, and then hopefully there'll be some time for you to ask some questions if you have them. Okay, so I don't propose to read out these slides, but just to say from the outset that Green and Healthy Frome as a project was hugely ambitious, and the fundamental core of that ambition was that it aimed to change systems. Systems change is something that we tend to measure over a period of decades. So we are slightly at a disadvantage measuring it after 3 years. However, there were plenty of things that arose where we're able to showcase ways in which there's sort of green shoots of growth that demonstrate that the community was indeed engaged to make changes that had co-benefits across different areas of work. And so that's what I'll talk you through today. The project was delivered across 3 partners. So specifically, those partners were Frome Town Council, Frome Medical Practice, and EdVenture. And they each had specific work streams that are around delivery, and EdVenture also worked on 2 other sort of areas of work, one being storytelling. They had sort of hub for the comms for the overall project, and then they also had the project lead, and some of the organisational work was in there as well, and the project lead, Becky Lovegrove, was responsible for Beyond Frome, which is about building out from Frome the connections, a wider network, and also trying to showcase some of the work that we were doing in the hope that it would act as an example to other places. The evaluation took place over the final 6 months of the project, and we reviewed over 200 documents. We interviewed more than 20 key informants. We went to Green and Healthy Frome events. We went to CAF events. We held focus groups, and we connected with other people who are doing similar or related work at the time. So that's the Civic Imaginaries Partnership, and also some work that the council have been doing with Frome Data Halo. And then we also had these sort of regular testing cycles with members of the project team. So to say that we were embedded is a bit of an understatement, really. We did start dreaming about Green and Healthy Frome. At high level, the project aimed to impact life in Frome in 3 measurable ways, and there were targets set within the initial proposal, which proved a little bit difficult to nail down in the process of evaluation. And I'm just going to skip through these fairly lightly. One of the important things about evaluation is that you tell a truthful story. And I don't think that anybody who put that bid together necessarily set out to set targets that were either impossible to achieve or difficult to measure, but that is the way it proved to be. And so what we're really thinking about was here in the numbers that I've presented here was what it was possible for us to reasonably attribute to the project. From our perspective, we've tried very hard not to make claims that are unreasonable or inflated in any way. And so what you should understand from this is that the target for the CO2 emissions, that was what we've managed to measure is most likely a significant underestimate. Again, the savings, what we've managed to measure, even though it's more than double of the original target, is likely a significant underestimate. And the only thing that we think is maybe an over measurement is the individual direct engagements with the project, because that number represents about 82% of the estimated population of Frome. And in terms of, you know, the sort of face validity of that, what we knew from just listening to people and talking on the streets was that not that many people really knew about the project. So we used 2 sets of measures for working on the evaluation and describing the findings. So we used the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development's 6 areas of relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact and sustainability as measures for the main body of the project. And the reason that we chose these was largely for transparency, because It's a robust measure, and that was something that was really important to the project, that we used something that we could compare with other types of evaluation in other places. So we wanted to use a measure that was recognised and had been used time and again in other places as well. And overall, we found that Green and Healthy Frome was very much meeting these criteria. So it's very well aligned with local community needs. It complemented existing initiatives, and the project had made, or people within the project had made an effort to make sure that there was coherence rather than overlap with other efforts. In spite of a lot of different things that had happened around the project, not least the pandemic recently prior to the project, and lots of challenges within the lineup of staff arriving and leaving through the course of the project, the effectiveness and the efficiency of the project were extraordinary. And we're also very pleased to be able to report on significant results across the work streams in terms of impact and projected sustainability. We can't speak to sort of long-term sustainability, but what we were able to see during the final half of our evaluation and the final quarter of the project, so January through to March, was that many of the key activities were becoming either embedded in business as usual for the partners, or were starting to take on their own life form in a different format in Frome. The project partners wanted us to look at four additional thematic areas, and these were impact in health, wellbeing, climate and community nexus, community participation and inclusion, partnership, systemic working and systems change, and influence and learning beyond place. Again, I'd refer you to the reports to dig into these specifically, but just to briefly pull out a point about each of these areas and themes. There was a significant opportunity in the project in terms of impact to learn by doing, and this is quite an unusual thing, and for communities to be able to be involved in learning by doing in a systems-based project is quite extraordinary. And we looked at various different models of measuring and movement towards systems change, and we were satisfied that the project helped to shift Frome and Frome's community in the direction of changed and enduring systems change. In terms of community participation and inclusion, I'd like to speak to the unusualness, if that's a word, of a collaboration between Adventure, the medical practice, and the town council. And it's specifically by engaging with organisations like Adventure, you gain an agility and a social enterprise lens and a lack of institutional constraints, which can bring some real freshness and new ideas and kind of momentum, which perhaps are less likely to just emerge if institutional partners are involved. In terms of partnership, systemic working and systems change, again, drawing on this idea of non-typical partnerships, so government, health institutions, community networks, this was a real crucible for new approaches to emerge, and the way that the partners worked, and particularly the people who were work stream leads, were able to work together and spark each other off and give ideas to each other, actually bringing them together to think together and to work together was one of the real highlights of the project, and something that we hope that Frome will continue to incubate. And finally, the project made a really tangible contribution to connections across sectors. And this is not just within Frome, this is more broadly across the UK. We've had a huge number of different places interested in what is happening in Frome across different sectors, and then also internationally. I've limited myself to highlighting just one achievement for each of the work streams, and this has been an extremely tough one to do. So if you're a work stream lead and you're here tonight, don't throw fruit. Frome Town Council held the Healthy Homes Retrofit and Renewables work streams, and through them created an informal network of highly aware residents who were connected to support, advice and expertise from the council. And also in doing so, those individuals became more and more expert in the advice that they were able to give and the direction that they were able to provide to residents. And that continues with the council able to offer up-to-date relevant local advice on all sorts of aspects of retrofit, renewables and many other things besides. Cycle Together, which was delivered by Frome Community Bike Project and Emma very specifically, saved an enormous amount of money, not only through cycle rides in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide equivalent from the riding instead of going in a car or a vehicle, but also through refurbishing, repairing and servicing bikes. And people will continue to make year-on-year savings if they continue to ride bikes instead of driving cars. And then Plastic Free Period, which was a collaboration between the town council and the medical practice, changed behaviour, and we had beautiful stories of real ambassador activities by participants who engaged with their relatives, their boyfriends, their families and all sorts of other people in their communities, and even went so far as to raise money so that the project could continue to give out free men art packs to menstruating young people. In Frome Medical Practice, choosing wisely was an extraordinary work stream in that it became embedded in multiple areas of work at Frome Medical Practice. And although it could be said that it had kind of accelerated some of these changes that were already happening, it's definitely based on the staff surveys and the behaviours, in clinical behaviours of clinicians at the practice. There's a culture that's been accelerated of non-medicated, demedicated care and deprescribing mainstreamed into a clinical approach. And that seems to be accelerated by the work of the project, enabling clinicians to do things that they would have had to have special funding for, but they instead were able to I don't want to use the word experiment, but they were able to try different things with seed funding. Green Community Connectors, again, was a really dramatic way of engaging the community, and they really used a very dynamic approach and a showcase in how to do communications about things that are green and healthy. So their approach included workshops, talks, a Frome radio show, podcasts, activities, changes to the environment at the medical centre, the list goes on. And there were really physical and tangible demonstrations of how human health is interconnected with community, with nature and with the climate and planetary health. And again, I've mentioned Plastic Free Period there because it was a partnership and it demonstrated how partnering across institutions actually enables greater access to target individuals. So it was an important learning there as well. And finally, but certainly not last in terms of the scale of the achievement, Adventure. I particularly want to refer you here to the summary report because it is brief and digestible, and me talking through this slide won't be. So you'll find there a breakdown of the achievements of individual residencies, but just to summarise, these residencies addressed multiple interconnected systems in Frome and showed people how in community and with creativity they could do things differently. They addressed food systems, youth climate action, seed sovereignty, textile systems, and river and the environment and open spaces. So it really covers a lot of the things that not only Frome residents are very concerned about, as we've already heard this evening, but also things that are absolutely critical to our survival as a species. We made 10 recommendations and they fall into 5 groups, I think. So the first one was really about bringing partnership to the fore, and that partnership needs to be the norm if we want to make change to systems. The second one is about making sure that people have information and access to information. So really maintaining that map of what's happening in Frome and how people can get involved in it. All of these things don't happen for free. There's heavy reliance on people's volunteered time within the project, and actually funding is critical. So budget needs to be set for collaboration and for partnership activities. Recommendations 4, 5, 6 and 7 and 8 are all about the learning that we gained from the project around how to do projects that are aimed at systems change. So there needs to be a robust structure at the core of these types of projects, and that needs to cover not only the way that people engage with the project, the design of the project, but also how data is collected, what data is collected, and how you tell the story, and to plan to prepare for that right from the start. And the final 2 really about how action on climate can continue in Frome, relating to the future of future shed residencies and similar initiatives, and around how we could enable and convene climate and health action in Frome. I've made a slide here which is about learning for the future, and these recommendations around how to do partnerships, which was a key set of recommendations from the report. I'm not going to read through all of those, you can do that yourselves, but critically, it seems that if you're going to do these kinds of partnerships, the most important thing to do is plan for the partnership as well as plan for the work that you plan to do. And even if the partnership doesn't work out exactly as you planned, if there's continued mechanisms throughout it to come together and to talk about how you're going to deal with the different things that happen, then that is going to put the partnership in a much better place to deliver what you set out to do than if there is no plan. And the second area of learning that I wanted to highlight was around evaluation. This evaluation was extremely tricky. And so we made a number of recommendations around exactly how to evaluate this kind of project in future. The critical piece about this is really not that it should be easy for the evaluators, that's not the purpose, but that you are actually able to show the impact of what you've done in a way that you can communicate and then get future funding for. So there's purpose in setting up evaluations and in setting up the mechanisms by which to measure and evaluate the things that you will want to look at the end. And so that was the second major area of learning. I promised you some comments from the evaluators, and so I'm going to finish with these 2. So this is our perspective, having ploughed through all the data and written the reports. Green and Healthy Frome has achieved extraordinary things substantially due to the courage shown by the Climate Action Fund and the Green and Healthy Frome partners in funding and running a complex project that tackled systemic issues through diverse activities with multiple systems touchpoints and helped Frome to move in the direction of transformed systems. And the impact of showing ways that communities can take action for the environment and climate in a way that's rewarding and strengthens a sense of community agency, counteracts helplessness, and should not be underestimated. So I'm happy to take questions, but I want to say that from our perspective, everybody who's involved in the Green and Healthy Frome project is to be congratulated, not only for the efforts that they put in and the extensive amount of additional time of their own that they volunteered, but also just for the sheer guts that it took to do something that is so unusual that when we went back to the to CAF, the funders, and said, well, can you show us what other places have done that's similar to this? They said no.
Brilliant. Thank you, Abby. I think that's a round of applause, and a round of applause for everyone on the project as well. Thank you so much for that brilliant presentation. And I think that those final two slides, particularly that last one about not underestimating the sort of sense of like agency that this project, particularly Future Shared, and which was run by Sue, which was amazing. And that sense of people bringing people together and counteracting that feeling of helplessness, I think so many of us are feeling, particularly during these current heat waves that we're experiencing. It's just not to be underestimated. And I think giving a space where people can come together was just, yeah, was really, really important. So any questions, Lisa?
Hi, I just want to say I totally understand the challenge that you had in evaluating that. And it's really nice to see, again, all of the things that happened in it. And I just want to pick up on a couple of your recommendations about kind of metrics, indicators, and baseline data. So what I didn't see on your slide was what systems change had actually happened. So it's really difficult to really see the impact of that work, which is such a shame because every single one of those projects had incredible amounts of impact for the people delivering, the wider community, and the people taking part in those activities. The fact that that's not recorded or able to be showcased means that it can't be written up in academic journals, it can't be used for future funding, as you said. And I know that there's lots of groups in the area, Spark Somerset, who provides training in how to evaluate projects. I'm sure that you do as well. And places like 3SG in Baines that support kind of charitable groups. I'm wondering if what would your thoughts be about possibly town council or some of the community organizations thinking about a training session about how to run evaluations, how to produce meaningful data that evidences impact and real change, because that's where funding comes from.
Mm. Yeah, so I think there's kind of two points that I would want to make in response. One of them is that systems change happens over a much longer period of time. And so, you know, we built into the project was that there would be a final evaluation after 3 years of the funded project. And yet we were looking for impact, and it was a project aimed at systems change. So there's an issue of timing there. And I think that, you know, looking at the same project further down the line and looking for different impacts further down the line might be, you know, a valuable task for somebody, but it was outside of the scope. Yeah. I think the other thing is that we've built into what we've recommended about evaluation that there is some early piece in any project, and in that partnership planning, that you come together and you plan how you're going to monitor things, you plan what you're going to measure. And we've made recommendations, if you read through the full report, around things like micro projects. So you're testing tiny little changes for a very short period of time, and that will give you a pilot to know whether you should measure it in a different way. So there were lots of different changes actually that took place within the evaluation work stream, and I think that's kind of hampered the work there. But yeah, I'm happy to pick up a further conversation.
Can I sort of come back on that bit as well, and just sort of, because I think the idea that we don't have any data. And I think the data we have is, we
Hmm.
have a lot of data and it is robust. I think that there were learnings that that we've got to gather, and we gather them as we were going through the project in terms of how the project was set up and that initial sort of targets and the baseline data that we had gathered that wasn't, as the project developed, I think it was sort of, there was lots of learnings about that it wasn't quite what we should have had. But again, just coming back to the complexity, is that I know that Becky and I think Owen as well went to CAF at one point to sort of for more help about how to evaluate this, and they were stumped as well because it was such a complex project. And it's very much a area of work that is developing at the moment, and we're part of that learning, right? So I think a lot of what we can contribute now is like how to evaluate a project like this, because we've tried to do it and realized we should have captured, there's this, there, I'm sure if you ask all of us, we say, okay, these are the questions we should have asked 3 years ago or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and we hands up, we didn't. But I think that we've also now got that knowledge as an organization, and also the collection of organizations, as to how we would do this differently again. I do think there is really robust data here. It's there are issues with it, and I don't think any of us are saying that there aren't, but I do think it is an incredibly firm platform for a lot of grant funding applications to be made in the future, to be able to demonstrate how much money we've saved, £417,000, for instance, with Healthy Homes. I think is brilliant.
I definitely am not saying that it hasn't been an amazing project, and there's amazing things in it, 100%. I just think if we're taking something from it, we could probably have sweat that project a little bit more in terms of the evidence that we could potentially collect, and thinking about bringing in maybe academic partners who do this work for free, master's students, things like that, and just supporting some of the other organizations in our town who maybe aren't as skilled in evaluation as well.
I don't disagree. I think it's also great that I was just chatting with Abby before it started about the work that Glasgow University are doing on the Civic Imaginaries project, and how that is taking that sort of like, this is very much like what this project did, and then that's taking a bigger lens out and looking at the broader thing. And I think that's really interesting. It's going to be really interesting how those two things fit together. I have been sent a draft of some of their stuff that I haven't looked at yet, but I will.
Also, when I say changes in the evaluation work stream, initially that some of those things that you've identified were already in place. It's just that as the process went on, they had to change, and it meant that we were unable to carry on, measuring certain things. So, for example, there were academic partners in the initial stages of the work. Yeah.
Nick, you had a question.
Is it working now? Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much. I won't repeat that again, but thank you very much. The evaluation, I think, is a real challenge. I worked on a project for the EU a few years ago, and they tried to impose an evaluation system on my team that was actually, most of it was illegal or impossible to achieve. So I think it's really important, but quite hard to actually fix into something as complex as this, with 3 different organizations working together. But it's brilliant. Just one tiny little point, and I'm not usually very good at detail, but I noticed in your project structure and design, you talk about budgets, and you say that Frome Medical Practice has approximately 150 staff and an annual budget of over 5 million, and Frome Town Council has approximately 40 staff and a budget of 3.6. I think there must be a naught missing somewhere, otherwise we're overpaying staff or they're underpaying staff at the medical centre.
Someone from the, does Helen or Karen want to answer that? Is that right? Is that? Could you use a microphone? So I just assume, Abby, that's question 4. Yeah.
So I guess as a medical practice, we don't generate income, we just have commission services. So we have a core contract. So what was really helpful about this funding was the ability to do stuff over and above our core contract. I'm not sure if that's answered quite what you wanted from that.
Is your annual budget 5 million? Do you know?
No, our annual budget is not 5 million. Our turnover would be 5 million. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was an error in the report. So yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone or comments or anything? No, amazing. Can I then just take one final moment just to say a massive thank you again to everyone who's involved in Green and Healthy Food, to all the team. I did actually try and write out everyone's names earlier so that I could thank everyone by name. And I got a bit, and then I got so paranoid that I was going to miss someone out that I then thought, no, I can't do this. But there's also a lot of people who have left and who are no longer, I was about to say no longer with us, and that sounds like they've died. They haven't, they're mainly at Baines. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone and the 3 partners for all their hard work and everyone that contributed to it. And there are still parts of it that continue on. And thank you, Abby, for your work on the evaluation. Thank you. Right. Okay. The next item on the agenda is to approve changes to the complaints procedure. So that is over to Peter.
Thank you. Every year we review our complaints procedure, and in fact, I don't think we have reviewed it for many years. But on this occasion, I decided to take the opportunity to conduct some research to look at what other large councils are doing and to identify some common practice in terms of their complaints procedures. I also took a look at the advice note produced by the National Association of Local Councils, NALC, and also some advice that's been provided by the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. And I'm not going to go into huge detail. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the report and also the proposed new procedure, but I just wanted to highlight some key findings from my research. Firstly, I would say that the procedure that we did have is already broadly aligned with the advice from NALC and the principles set out in their advice note. So that's good. That's a good starting point, in terms of looking at our complaints procedure. But what I have recommended in this report is that we would benefit from the introduction of a complaints register, which actually tracks all of the complaints that may be received and the progress in dealing with them. So that's number one. Also, I discovered some interesting practice in terms of, in some cases, councils produce an annual summary report of the complaints that have been received. Obviously, complaints that are received in confidence and treated sensitively, but there are ways of actually identifying themes and trends and maybe things that need to be improved. And I feel that is particularly useful thing for us to do, because we are trying our best to be a learning organisation and also doing our best to improve as an organisation too. So that's another thing that I would recommend that we consider. We'll notice also that I've suggested that we address the issue of potential unreasonable complaint behaviour. And in order really to help with the management of that by staff that come into contact with those that may be perceived to be behaving unreasonably, in coming to us with their complaints. I'm pleased to say I don't think that happens very often, but I think it's important to be prepared. And in fact, the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman has suggested very firmly that kind of policy is introduced. So I have taken the lead from that and suggested that there is a section within our complaints procedure that deals with unreasonable complaint behaviour. The other really important omission at the moment in terms of our complaints procedure is properly addressing our responsibilities under the Equality Act 2010, and in particular ensuring that we make reasonable adjustments where necessary in the course of investigating complaints. For example, there may be a request from someone who makes a complaint and wants it investigated for them to be accompanied at meetings. So that's something that we need to take seriously. And so that is referred to in the new proposed procedure. Lastly, but by no means least, we seem to be an outlier in terms of our three-stage complaints process. And in any case, my opinion on this is that a three-stage process, assuming that we go through every stage, is potentially quite a draw on resources. In fact, could be regarded as an excessive draw on resources. And so I'm proposing that our formal complaints process should change, so that in terms of the initial investigation, as before, that should be done by the town clerk. And should the matter not be resolved at that stage, then a new complaints committee is convened. And I've set out in the report proposed terms of reference for that complaints committee, and also some nominations for membership for you to consider. So those, I think, are the key points that I wanted to raise. There's a lot more detail in the report and the complaints procedure itself, but obviously I'll take any questions.
Great. Have any questions or comments from anyone about that? Anyone got any? No? Great. I think everyone's happy. Can we get the recommendations up on the screen, please? They're up there. So the recommendations are to adopt a revised complaints procedure as shown in Appendix 6.1. That involves the creation of a new complaints committee delegated by council to hear complaints as a second and final stage of the formal complaints process, the introduction of a complaints register and production of an annual summary report to council to support organisational learning, adoption of guidance around how unreasonable complaint behaviour will be managed, and setting out how we will meet the requirement under the Equality Act 2010 to make reasonable adjustments where necessary in the way we investigate complaints, to agree the terms of reference for the complaints committee as set out in this report and amend standing orders accordingly, and to approve the following as initial members of the complaints committee: Fiona Bowers, that's me, chair, Steve Tanner, Mark Dorrington, Richard Pinnock, Anita Collier and Polly Lamb. Is everyone happy with those recommendations and understands them? One okay? Any questions or anything? No? Great. Can I get someone to propose that? Andy Jones, seconded by Polly. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Unanimous. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Brilliant. The next item on the agenda is an update on the work of the planning committee. And so it's over to Steve Tanner, who's looking very smart while hobbling along. I'm pleased you made it back from London in time. Steve is obviously chair of our planning committee.
Yeah, if anyone wants to complain about traffic in Frome, I've got quite a nice story for them for today. Right, it's been a while since we've done a formal update on planning at the council meeting. So I thought it'd be quick to just highlight the work of the committee and the officers, a lot of which happens behind the scenes, but is vital nonetheless. So a quick recap: the planning committee meets every 3 weeks. This is to coincide with the statutory 21-day period we are given to comment on any application. As a statutory consultee, we see every plan application that's submitted within the parish of Frome, and larger developments that may occur in our immediate vicinity, such as Oldfield that's happening at the moment. In the past year, we've seen over 200 applications. Owen or Jane will give a bit more detail about this number in a bit, but these are made up of anything from pruning, felling trees, alterations to listed buildings, extensions, and new builds and larger developments. As we have a large conservation area within Frome, these get special attention, and we often see applications for just works to trees, pruning, replacement windows, general renovation. And whilst we make our own comments, we often defer to the specialist conservation officer that Somerset Council has, but also take note of the comments that often we get from the civic society. Jane and Owen look at every application, and those that warrant discussions are highlighted and discussed at the planning meetings, along with any others should a member of the committee deem it necessary. Consequently, we have little control over what's going to be on the agenda at any given meeting. These can be as short as 30 minutes, 23 is the record, or nearly 3 hours in the case of a larger development. We have been known to go on for over 3 hours. We always welcome members of the public to meetings, and we do our best to hear from anyone who wants to give an opinion or comment on any particular application. Sometimes we get no members of the public, other times we've got to issue tickets. We don't operate a time rule like Somerset and encourage debate between parties at our meetings where possible. We feel that if residents are asking questions, developers should answer them there and then, or at the very least follow up. I think it's fair to say that many residents pay little attention to planning matters and it's happening on their doorstep. This is to be expected, and we try and lead residents through the planning process so they can understand what's a genuine area of concern and what cannot be taken into account when determining an application. For instance, I don't like it is not a valid reason to object to a plan application. And we try and give them proper reasons to actually help them explain that. Jane and I have always felt that engaging with applicants is a better way of trying to influence an application than just objecting sometimes. This equally applies to residents and developers alike. We like to give constructive feedback, even for those applications where we don't agree, as it can often lead to improvements. And just because we engage, it doesn't necessarily mean we won't object. Sometimes it's just the wrong development in the wrong place. But at least we, by explaining our reason to the applicant, we always feel it's worth engaging, because sometimes if things do go through, dialogue leaves the door open for us for improvements and possible Section 106 contributions, should these things happen. I'd like to think we've built a reputation, or Jane has anyway, of professionalism and pragmatism. We have been told our comments are influence. It's very difficult for us to quantify that. But recently we've had approaches from other parishes regarding our strategy, and they were surprised to hear that we actually engaged with developers. They just sent their comments off to Somerset Planning and sat back and waited. Applicants for large developments also seem to appreciate this approach, and will often contact us long before any plan application is submitted. This gives us the chance to highlight areas that we feel is important to us, such as integrated pedestrian, cycling, public transport routes, sustainability, green spaces, etc. On some applications, we've had meetings over a year before any formal plan application is submitted, and sometimes up to 20 meetings in between. The longest is a 5-year gap between the very first meeting and a final application. Once we've formulated a position, it's sent to Somerset East Planning. As we are a statutory entity, they're obliged to answer any comments we have. If the application is deemed to be worthy of discussion at that committee, we will often attend. Regrettably, we only get 3 minutes to make a statement. There's no chance to enter into any dialogue. So we see this as a chance to reiterate our position, seek clarifications. Frankly, the main work's been done by then. And as well as plan applications, there are a lot more long-term projects and initiatives that we are progressing at the moment, which Jane's going to sort of talk more in detail about. But some of these are the scoping consultation for the new Somerset local plan, the housing and economic land availability assessment, known as the call for sites, the movement strategy across the LCN, which Owen's doing a great job on, the need to change the antiquated Section 106 roads in Somerset East to a community infrastructure levy, which other areas of Somerset are about to receive, and an update to the Frome town parish boundary, which, given that most of the development is taking place outside of the boundary, is both urgent and very necessary. So I'm going to pass over to Jane, and she can read you through the rest.
Steve.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Thankfully, he's covered most of the report, so there's not much left for me to say. But he did promise you some stats, which I think, oh, I've got the thing. We're not gone too far. Yes. Unfortunately, Owen couldn't be here at the meeting in person tonight. But he's put some statistics together for us. And actually, looking at the stats is something relatively new to us. It's not something that we did before. We kind of. I'm shorter than Steve. That's why. So yes, as I said, looking at stats is something relatively new to us. We used to send off our responses, and then we would look at what decisions have been made. But actually, it's good for us to know that our comments are actually in line with the decisions that are being made. I mean, that's not always the case, but here you go. So as promised, we considered 231 planning applications and so far have submitted 205 responses, averaging around 20 applications per month. You can see that the most common application types were householder applications, which relate to changes to existing houses. So 61 of those, tree works and felling within conservation areas, 59. Full planning applications, which are the more detailed proposals for new developments, 45 of those, and applications relating to tree preservation orders, which seek permission for work to protected trees, 18. We objected to 21 of those applications, and of these, 6 were refused by Somerset and 3 were approved. And before anyone says those numbers don't add up, not all of the applications have had a decision yet. So some of them, like the more complex or controversial ones, take longer to go through the system. So yeah, the stats don't add up. And in some cases, the council, mostly we submit no objection comments to the majority of the applications considered, and 6 of those were later refused and 126 approved. So these figures show that whilst we seek to work constructively with the planning system, we also continue to challenge proposals where there are concerns about their impact on the town, its residents, heritage, environment or infrastructure. You're pleased to know that's the end of the stats. And I forgot to move the slide on, but you're all so engrossed, it didn't matter anyway. Okay, so the next thing to talk about, and this is all set out in the report, but that's the movement and place plan. And again, Owen has made significant progress on the Frome area movement and place plan, formerly known as the movement strategy. And that includes securing technical and policy support from Somerset Council with a view to developing a model that can be used more widely across the county. So yeah, again, we're at the forefront, or guinea pigs if you prefer. So engagement has begun with neighbouring parishes to co-develop the plan because, you know, as I'm sure we've explained before, the movement strategy, you know, you don't just stop at the border of Frome. Frome is a place where a lot of the outlying parishes used to shopping, education, all sorts of things. And we're also working with a specialist transport consultant to carry out the data and research, the things that we technically can't do. So there's a programme of engagement activities that's been scheduled for the summer 2026, including field visits with parish representatives at stands and local events to share information and gather local issues and priorities. And because he's not here, I can say that at one he had 2 hot dogs and a strawberry sundae. Anyway, is he? Oh, he's online. Sorry. Okay, so in addition to my Frome, you can see the cover page there. Sorry, Go Vocal being set up with a survey to help further understand local issues and priorities. So please, can you all complete the survey? So Steve has also mentioned a lot about the planning applications that we deal with, and the report gives a summary of the major applications that we're currently dealing with, which includes Selwyn community. I know this, although the site now has outline consent, there's still a lot of planning to be done, including the design codes and reserve matters. Likewise, if the Alford application is approved in outline, we move to design codes and reserve matters. And let's not forget all the variation of conditions that will follow those. So in addition to all the meetings and discussions, you know, this is some of what Steve referred to as the work behind the scenes. Then we move on to the local plan, which is probably the key thing for us to focus on at the moment. And again, as set out in the report, Somerset consulting on the draft scope of the local plan, its vision and their engagement plan. So this is the first stage of the consultation, and it sets out the really broad matters to be covered by the policies that will come later in the plan. All the policy headlines that they're referring to in the consultation mirror those in the NPPF, National Planning Policy Framework. And there are some area specific headlines, such as larger sites in Taunton and Bridgewater. They've also published the Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment, or the HELA, which identifies the land that was put forward in the call for sites. As I say, whilst this has been published, it's not actually being consulted on at this stage. And following discussions that we had at the Frome summit meeting, I have been in touch with Bill Cotton, the planning manager at Somerset Council, just to see how we can work together to get more information out to residents and help people through the process of engaging with it further down the line. So we'll be looking at whether there should be any specific policies for Frome. One example would be likely to propose a specific policy for allotments.
Excellent.
Thank you. And also, the reason that I'm telling you this is because the deadline for responses is the 24th of July, and the date of the next council meeting is after that date. We're asking for delegated authority for the planning committee to be able to agree a response on behalf of the council. Then we move on to licensing, and I didn't have a slide for this. I was tempted to put something up, but I didn't. So we also need to formalise our process for responding to licensing consultations. Our current process involves consulting with the relevant councillors, but we should have a more formal and minuted process in place. So we're also asking for licensing to be added to the standing orders for the planning committee, so that there can be a debate and a formal minuted decision. But we'll also still be consulting with the relevant ward councillors and any lead councillors for their views on that. So there is my recommendation, unless anybody has any questions.
Do you want to take?
That's your role.
Tracy. Nita.
I'm just interested to know of the things how many were the 6 that you objections you in the stats at the beginning, because I was gripped and I was watching and listening. How many things did you not approve and did you object to?
So hang on, let me go back to the figures. So of the 231 applications, the 205 responses.
21.
Yes,
21 object. Were they commonly within the same area? Were most of them to do with, for example, large housing build projects, or were they very variable?
I'd say the things that we probably object to the most are the householder applications. We tend to see a lot of instances where we think there might be overlooking to a neighbour's property, or the size of the extension that's being proposed, particularly when it's a 2-storey extension, can be really overbearing to the neighbouring property. Trees, we do tend to make quite a lot of objections to trees, because it seems to be, if the tree is causing a problem, let's chop it down, when actually we prefer that they look at other solutions first, such as tree root barriers and that kind of thing. So no, I wouldn't say it was all one particular area.
Anita and then Richard.
Thank you. As you know, I've had a handful of emails from my ward residents over the last 12 months about planning of all sorts, really, trees and housing and what have you. I know that there is a planning backlog at Somerset, because they've made that very clear. And although they were trying to work out, I understand it's even worse than it was. My question really is, do we know if there is a separate planning enforcement team once planning has been given? And if so, do they have the same level of delay as the general team? Or is there any way that we can put pressure on the enforcement of some of these plans? Because I know it really frustrates people.
You're absolutely right, Anita, and I'd say it's worse, far, far worse than the planning team. They have, it's not just Somerset, to be fair. A lot of councils are struggling to recruit for enforcement. And actually Somerset recently did publish something about their enforcement service. They are working hard to try and recruit more people, but yes, unfortunately, there is a big backlog, and they will go through a process of prioritising which things they see needed dealing with.
I'm thinking of one particular example at the
which
moment, which is the house that's gone way up higher than it should have been. And obviously, if there's a delay in that planning enforcement, then by the time people are recruited, it may well be up and built. Is there a way that those planning enforcement people could actually insist that it comes down?
There is, yes, there is. I mean, there's a process that goes before that. As a standard, they will be invited to submit a retrospective application for what they have built. If that is refused, obviously they have the right to appeal. If that is then refused by the inspector, yes, they can be made to reinstate it or build it back in line with the plans. There are processes that Somerset can do, such as issuing stop notices. It's a legal process, it's complex, it takes time, but actually in this instance, I think making sure that the Somerset councillors intervene where they can is which we have already.
It sounds as though it would ultimately be a 2 or 3 year process at least, but something to be done, in which case these people have to put up with that site for some time.
So it is very unfortunate, but yeah, there is a process.
Richard, did you have a question?
My question is a request. About a week ago, a statutory instrument was passed in Parliament that is due to come into law in October. And the aim of this SI is to curtail what gets discussed at planning committees like the one in Somerset. And one of the ways that you can that we could get plans discussed is to set up a forum. Now, whether that's Frome Town Council's planning committee, and thank you very much for the work that you do on that, or it could be the LCN, or it could be a group of parish councils. But it's a request that you speak to our neighbours and Somerset Council over the summer, so that Frome doesn't lose out when this new law comes in October.
Thank you. Yes, I think speaking to our neighbours is something that we are already doing, but absolutely, I think it's going to make a big difference to the type and amount of applications that go before the committee, and yes, people won't be able to air their concerns. So thank you for that suggestion.
Can I just ask a question back to you, Richard? Is it definitely will Somerset's process definitely change in light of this? And there's nothing we can do about that?
Yeah, so it's government legislation that's gone through as a statutory instrument. So
Somerset Council has to.
So Somerset Council has, and every council in England, I guess England and Wales maybe, that will be affected by this. And basically, it's the government's attempt to curtail what gets discussed, i.e., get more plans through councils. I mean, upper tier councils. Yeah.
We're already arranging meetings with neighbouring parishes about the boundary review, so we can add that onto the agenda for that. And it might also be a good thing to bring up at the Frome Councillors Forum, which is later in July, because that's where all the Somerset councillors will be. So yeah, Steve, did you want to come in on it?
We're talking to a microphone when you're next to me, isn't it? I think also this was going to be brought up at the LCN at some point as well, from memory, but I'm not sure when. But yeah, as Richard said, basically the government have committed to building whatever it is, 1.5 million houses, is it, or something? And this is basically an instrument for them to push through those applications as quickly as they can, and they're you know, treading over democracy in order to do it, for want of a better word.
Philip.
Thank you. Just linking those two things together, Anita's point and Richard's point. It may not, I'm not really expecting an answer, Jane, but it's something that we've sort of discussed probably over coffee at planning and so on, not in the open meeting. Are there any councils in England that have tackled this issue of enforcement or the lack of enforcement? Because as Anita says, you know, once these things are built, it's very, very difficult to reinstate or put back or demolish or whatever. And I know that we had a discussion once, an informal discussion about the fact that would an authority like Somerset delegate some powers to allow parish councils to do if not the enforcement, but the eyes and ears on the ground? Because a lot of planners, particularly large developers, will get the application, you know this, get the application and then basically build what they want to build. And then it's very, very difficult to sort it afterwards. I'm just wondering if there are any examples that someone's actually tackled this for benefit of residents.
Not that I can quote off the top of my head, but to answer your question a little in terms of eyes and ears, to an extent we are already doing that, and we guide residents to do that as well. In terms of us being able to enforce, you have to be the local planning authority to legally be able to enforce. So we couldn't do that, but yes, I mean there are further discussions to be had with Bill Cotton following on from the summit. But I think his team are and him are tied up with the local plan stuff at the moment. But yeah, it's certainly something that we can discuss in more detail.
Right, Nick.
You mentioned the community infrastructure levy.
Yes.
Something. Do we have an idea of what that could be worth to the town in terms of money?
Lot.
A lot is probably the best answer we can give at the moment. I mean, Section 106 agreements, depending on what they're for, education, flooding, open spaces, you know, can be into the hundreds of thousands per for the larger developments. So it really depends on how much additional development comes forward to be able
But it's a per square meter charge or levy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And per dwelling as well. So it's just, it could be a significant amount of money that we then have the opportunity, we can decide what it is spent on rather than it being dictated through a legal agreement.
We can't decide the amount.
We can't decide the amount. That's standard, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Late last year, I did write on behalf of Shepton, with Peter's help, on behalf of Shepton Mallet Town Council, Glastonbury Town Council. There were 4, Wells, us. That was it. On behalf of the 4 major town councils in Mendip, I did write to Councillor Bill Revens requesting that we look at whether it would be possible to move from Section 106 agreements to SIL because of how valuable it would be to us, and and because Mendip is an outlier in Somerset now because of historic agreements. He did pass on to Councillor Mike Rigby, who did have a look and came back to me, and essentially it was, you've got to wait for the local plan, which we were expecting it to be, but we thought it was worth it was worth a try. So we have tried to get it changed.
Can I just say that I think something in the region of 25% of the community infrastructure levy goes to neighbourhood plan authorities, like us. We have a neighbourhood plan, and so if SIL was in existence, we would be entitled to 25%.
Yeah, as opposed to 12%, which those without neighbourhood plans don't have.
So that's a considerable sum of money, and obviously other councils in Somerset that have access to that SIL money are able to plough that into projects in their own area without restriction. They can spend the money on whatever they wish. So we'll do our utmost to ensure that that we have access to SIL.
Great. Any other questions or comments? In which case, can I get the recommendations up on the screen? So the first one is to agree that the formal response to Somerset local plan consultation is agreed by the planning committee on the 16th of July. And the second one is that standing orders are amended to enable the planning committee to respond to licensing applications. So can I get a proposed by Anita, seconded by Lindsay? All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Great, thank you very much, Jane. And the next item on the agenda is for decision, the renewal of our NALC Gold Award, which is to Laura. Do you have anything to say, Laura? You've read the report. Any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Laura on the paper, on the report? This is for us to reapply to be a Gold Award council, which we have been previously. Yeah, so in October 2021 we achieved the Gold Award, so this is to redo that application. So oh yeah, Andy.
Just sort of quickly tying in NALC and SALC, you may be aware I'm the remaining member of SALC representing Frome Town Council. My term comes to an end just after the May elections. So if anybody in this room is interested in standing for SALC in my place, come and talk to me.
Thank you very much, Andy. In that case, so the recommendation is Frome Town Council, or this is probably one of those ones where we have to do it. Frome Town Council confirms by resolution that all the required documents, information and conditions are in place for the NALC Gold Award and that these are published on Council's website where applicable. Do we confirm by that? Can I get a proposer? Andy Jones, seconded by Philip Campagna. All those in favour? Is Lindsay actually there? I'll leave that up to Peter to decide whether we take that or not.
That's it's unanimous in terms of who's present. So that's fine.
Brilliant. Great. The next item on the agenda is staff expenses and councillor allowances 2026. Sarah, are you?
That was a short report that went out. The staff expenses policy has been rewritten in plain English, and hopefully it's clearer to everybody. The only amendment is the rate of mileage that follows the HMRC recommendations from 45p to 55p a mile. Those expenses policies go across the board. Staff and councillors can use the same policy if they need to claim. The council allowances for 26-27 are based on the remuneration panels, Somerset Council's remuneration panel's recommendation of 8% of a Somerset councillor's rate. So that's gone up by a small amount of £41, and that's what we propose for 26-27 for councillor allowances. In terms of the council leaders allowance, that would be a separate report coming in the autumn. We're waiting for the external auditor to approve our first year of operating a council leaders allowance, and as soon as we get that approval early September, we'll write a report for the continuation.
Be council chair.
Okay, thank you.
Council chair.
I shall correct the text. So other than that, there's nothing else to say on the paper. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from anyone? Nick?
Yeah, Sarah, how many councillors are claiming the allowance?
About 50%, possibly.
Okay.
Maybe 10 rather than 9. Okay, 9, say 9.
And out of 17.
I know, yeah, so
okay.
Around 50%.
Thanks very much, thank you.
And those names are published on our website.
Sorry, yes, they are. They're published annually each year, how much has been claimed by which person.
Okay, anyone else? In that case, let's go to the recommendations. So it is to approve the revised staff expenses policy and associated dependencies, and to approve the 3.2% increase in councillor annual allowance to 1,332 per annum. Would anyone like to propose that? Andy Jones, seconded by Tracy. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Great. And then the final item on the agenda is for decision, reapproval of chapters in the Constitution, the access to information policy, the publication scheme, the information retention and disposal policy, the data protection policy, and the general data protection regulation privacy information, authored by Laura. You've read the report, any questions? Any questions for Laura about any of those changes to the Constitution? Amazing. So the recommendations are to approve the remaining Chapter 18 to Privacy Notice UK GDPR, approve the suggested amendments to the following policies: access to information policy, publication scheme, information retention and disposal policy, data protection policy, and privacy notice, open brackets, UK GDPR, close brackets, and re-adopt the updated policies. Everyone okay? Everyone, can I get a proposer? Proposed by Andy Jones, seconded by Lisa. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Brilliant. So the next meeting will be at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, the 5th of August at Frome Town Hall. Sadly, I think this is probably the last time that I'll be able to chair a council meeting in person, probably for the rest of the year, but I will be on Zoom and in spirit as well. But yeah, it's been lovely being back. So yeah, thank you everyone and have a good night.